Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, May 5th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 121 days. The game against Michigan in 205 days. We are talking linebackers today. It is a position where Ohio State in the past has had some kind of shaky units some of the last few years since the Pete Werner group left a few years ago. But I think it's a position where Ohio State's feeling pretty darn good about things heading into this season. We're going to be talking with our good buddy Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, we did not get a chance to see Tommy Eichenberg or Steele Chambers do much of anything during the spring, at least during the spring game, but it feels like those two guys, in Jim Knowles' second season, he's feeling pretty good about his two starters there at linebacker going into the year.
Yeah, he definitely is, and I don't think we talked to Tommy Eichenberg in the spring, and just talking to other guys on the defense, they just couldn't say enough about the feeling and the confidence they have in being in the second year of this defense, and the understanding that they had the ability to make plays that everybody was hoping to see last year. And even Jim Knowles talked about it last year. Like, you'll see plays start to be made the more comfortable guys get. And that happened to a degree, but kind of folded down the stretch. But now with guys being able to put everything they learned to use in the spring, Tommy Eichenberg, Steele Chambers, they went through everything last year. Steele Chambers and Jim Knowles have a relationship where they get after each other a little bit, and they grow. And Steele Chambers has grown, and just hasn't been a linebacker for long in college, and last year was really a learning experience, and now they know the stuff, they know it, and so I would expect Tommy Eichenberg was a second team All-American last year. I assume we'll see him in first team, mix in the magazines coming here next month. And Steele Chambers will be in the all Big Ten mix because these are two guys who are veterans. They were productive last year, and now they have a much better idea of what they're doing in a defense. So how good could they be knowing all that they know now?
It does feel like between Steele Chambers actually probably being more confident in just as a linebacker in general, both of those guys being more confident in the defense and their role in the defense now that it's the second year, and you're building off a pretty solid baseline there. That feels like you're setting yourself up for, again, a second-team All-American last year for Tommy Eichenberg. Is he a first-team All-American this year? Is Steele Chambers in that first-team All-Big Ten, maybe some kind of All-American role? I mean, that is a good, solid building block for the defense. It is not a linebacker-driven defense, but that is a position that is sort of Jim Knowles' position of focus, position of interest, and you've got James Laurinaitis there now too. So this feels like to me, of all the starting groups outside of wide receiver, maybe running back, maybe corner, maybe. I mean, it feels like this is one of the positions where Ohio State probably feels the most confident that they're going to get, at the very least, an above average performance this year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think there's any concerns about Tommy Eichenberg, and Jim Knowles was effusive in his praise about him last year, just immediately once he got to know him, talking about him in the spring, and then you see the way he played and the understanding that he of the defense he had last year. He's a fast learner, so I think you'll just continue to see him. I think the blossoming may come from really Steele Chambers as he becomes more of a playmaker, and they ask him to do more in the backfield, because at Oklahoma State, Jim Knowles would like his linebackers to get into the backfield, like Malcolm Rodriguez, who is now doing well with the Lions, had multiple double-digit tackles for loss his senior season at Oklahoma State in 2021. Could we see that from Steele Chambers being more aggressive as that will linebacker, doing more and making more plays, as a guy who is every year he's struggling, trying to make weight, trying to stay at that 235-pound range, and by the time the season ends, he's down to 228 and stuff like that. Where now I think he fully considers himself a linebacker, and together there were no concerns. Talking to the coaches, we heard inflections and words of concern about other positions. Those two guys, you set it and forget it.
And those two guys, even with those two guys out for Eichenberg's case all spring, Steele's Chambers' case part of the spring, it still looked pretty good at linebacker this spring, because you still had Cody Simon there, who is someone who sort of seemed like he was coming on pretty strong a couple of years ago, 2022, and then just he got hurt and was never quite healthy that year, and then last year was just behind behind Eichenberg, behind Chambers. He's healthy now. He looked good this spring as well. CJ Hicks was a 5-star last year, did not play a snap on defense, but once the opportunity sort of was available to him this spring, he looked pretty good there as well. It feels like, we can talk about CJ Hicks in the at the jack position when we do the defensive line kind of preview, because it feels like that might be his kind of main role this year. But there is depth there where you go back a couple of years and the Kayvon Pope and Dallas Gant and those guys where just you were sort of expecting guys to take the next step and it just kind of didn't happen and they transferred out. And Taraja Mitchell, you can put him in that same boat as well. This has gone from a position of real concern a couple of years ago to now, not only are they feeling great about the starters, it feels like your top 4 you're feeling pretty confident in.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Cody Simon earlier. That 2021, he started 10 games, 9 of those at middle linebacker. Tommy Eichenberg started, I think, 4 games that year at middle linebacker, and those two shared that role. But Cody Simon dealing with injuries for much of his career, the second half here, healthy, has been solid and a guy that the coaches can trust. And last year, he would have been the number 2 Will or Mike. If Steele Chambers went down, you throw Cody Simon in. If Tommy Eichenberg went down, you throw Cody Simon in. This year, I wonder if that's still the case. Cody Simon is definitely the number 2 middle linebacker, but I wonder if something happened to Steele Chambers, if they wouldn't go to their number two will linebacker, CJ Hicks, rather than going to their number 3 linebacker, Cody Simon. And I think that when it reaches that point, that's when you've got something in CJ Hicks, and clearly they do. But in terms of the trust that they have, once CJ Hicks is one of those 2 that can come in at a moment's notice and is no longer the guy behind Cody Simon as the will, and once CJ Hicks is the definite number 2 will, then that tells you the coaches trust him and the coaches will put him into a game. So I think that will be interesting to watch just to see if something happens. But and that will give you an idea of where their trust is, because obviously in blowouts early in the season, CJ Hicks is going to play. I want to see him play earlier in games when the games are in doubt, and that'll tell us exactly how much he is trusted. But watching him this spring, we saw him make plays. He was fantastic in the spring game against the pass. He's a guy that can he can blitz, he can defend the pass, he can defend the run. He just has to do it consistently. And that was what Ryan Day said after the spring game. He's flashing more, and you need to go from flashing to being consistent. Right now he's flashing more. That consistency is what they're still searching for. And I think this spring went a long way to making that happen.
And CJ Hicks is one of the 5-star defensive players from the recruiting class of 2022 who might be kind of ping-ponging between a couple different position groups, whether he's the will linebacker or the jack with the defensive line. Another one is Sonny Styles. Sonny Styles is a 5-star from last year, took a significant role during the Peach Bowl against Georgia, and he's with the safeties, and probably, but there is probably, we have seen him in that Sam linebacker / nickel kind of role before. So is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? Whichever bucket you want to put him in, he feels like someone you're probably going to see more of this year as well.
Yeah, and when I've done my depth chart projection on the message board, or I did my linebacker recap on BuckeyeHuddle.com, I put Sonny Styles as the number 1 Sam, and you can call him a Sam. You just change the position to Sonny, just call it the Sonny, and that's what he does, because you can make that a Sam, you can make it at times a nickel, but he, to me, is the number 1 Sam, and I think they want to see if he can hold up against the run, against teams that are going to run it, not just 12 personnel teams like Georgia who are going to throw it, but teams that can run it, rather than bringing in Cody Simon to be that Sam, or somebody, another true linebacker to be that Sam. If Sonny Styles can come in and handle that gives you so much versatility and allows you to do different things from snap to snap to keep a quarterback guessing, which is really the name of the game. So we've seen him set that edge as a Sam, and he can float back and float around. I still see this. I envision this thing where he is the Sam, but at times he will transition will switch with a safety, and that safety will go to the nickel, and there's a lot of things you can do with him on the field. Just it's kind of the opposite of the 12 personnel on offense. There's so many different things you can do with that. He's kind of the 12 personnel for the defense.
Right, and the whole point of a 12 personnel, well, one of the points of a 12 personnel anyway, is you're trying to create a mismatch, and you're trying to create, you don't have a guy on your defense who is big enough to cover this tight end, but also fast enough. Your linebackers are too slow to cover this tight end, but your corners are too small to cover this tight end. Sonny Styles feels like he's kind of, as the guy who's a little faster and a little bigger than you probably should be as a human being, he's someone who kind of is the answer to that, where maybe it's not a mismatch anymore. And that is a very, very important tool to have. We have heard him called the Swiss Army knife. We have heard him called the secret weapon. Either way, it feels like Jim Knowles is going to be deploying him somewhere this fall, whether you want to put him in the safety bucket or the linebacker bucket. The other guys, three younger guys there on the linebacker unit, Gabe Powers and Reed Carrico, who we got to watch this spring, Arvell Reese, who's going to be arriving this summer from Glenville. I guess we really should focus on Powers and Carrico because we've actually seen them. Powers especially felt like he maybe is a little closer to this is a deep depth chart, so this is not going to be an easy place to crack the field, but watching him this spring especially, I felt like he was maybe closer to being ready to play in some kind of a role, whether it's this year or next year, than I might have expected going into the spring.
Yeah, he surprised me, impressed me. I think the first time we got to see him, it was in 7-on-7s perhaps, or red zone, and he was defending the pass. And then he's like, well, okay, he's got some range. He can cover the pass and defend it and get his hand in there, but can he stop the run? And then another scrimmage, you see him doing well like that, and he looks like a Big Ten starting middle linebacker, and he's got the size for it. And he is set up so well right now. Yes, the depth chart is loaded for him, but Cody Simon and Tommy Eichenberg are seniors, and they could go next year. Cody Simon obviously could still come back with a COVID year, but like Gabe Powers could be the Ohio State starting middle linebacker as a redshirt sophomore, and that's a pretty good gig next year. But yeah, I was impressed by him, and just talking to him, the amount of learning that he's done from Tommy Eichenberg, and just the following that he has done, and the learning with him and Cody Simon just under that linebacker learning tree has done him well. Reed Carrico, interesting to talk to him as well, and he played some Will, and Jim Knowles said he was going to put him at some Sam this spring, so maybe that happened, maybe that didn't, but Reed Carrico is another guy who looked at Tommy Eichenberg as an example, because Tommy Eichenberg didn't play until his third season. Reed Carrico really hasn't played. He's entering his third season, and people look at him and like, are you going to transfer? Are you going to transfer? He's like, I'm not going anywhere. Everybody has their own path. Everybody has their own timing. Tommy Eichenberg took him 3 years to play, and then he finally gets to play, and he is a second team All-American, like we mentioned earlier, and going to have a very successful career at Ohio State. Sometimes these things just take time, and as long as you're putting in the effort, and the time will take care of itself.
So that will cover the linebackers for the sort of post-spring recap. Like I said, I think a position where Ohio State is feeling pretty darn good about things. The defense overall looked pretty solid this spring when we got to see them in practices and scrimmages, and then, of course, the spring game as well. If that defense is good, if that defense is as good as it feels like it could be a pretty darn good year in Columbus. So if you want to read more about that defense, more about the recruiting that is going to help form the 2024 and 2025 defenses and beyond, read about the scheme that is being deployed by that Ohio State defense, a great place to do all of it is at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We've got our team of scheme X's and O's gurus. We've got our team of recruiting guys. We've got our team of team coverage guys. It is all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Fantastic community as well. Lots of active threads on the message board about Ohio State sports, about travel, about drinking, bourbon, whatever, golf, you name it, TV shows. Lots of you want to talk about anything. A great place to do it is at the Huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Fantastic community, as I said. Lots of fun conversations there. Do weekly chats with Mark Givler. Weekly columns, members exclusive columns on recruiting from Alex Gleitman and Mark Givler. Team coverage from Tony and Kevin and I. X's and O's scheme stuff. You want your X's and O's questions answered? You want to become a smarter football fan? Ask our X's and O's gurus at the huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And also you can find us on our YouTube channels, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, and of course youtube.com/@CFBPlaybook, our new X's and O's and sort of nationally focused YouTube channel. You're going to want to subscribe to that one as well. Lots of kind of different stuff there if you want a little broader look at college football on the whole. And then, of course, you can find all of our podcasts wherever fine podcasts are sold. Just search Buckeye Huddle on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Spotify or Spreaker or wherever you like to find your podcast. You can find our podcast. Just search Buckeye Huddle. And if you can leave us a 5-star rating or review, which we would really appreciate that as well. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.